In the year 1513, on the shores of India, the Portuguese naval commander, Afonso de Albuquerque, was drafting a letter to King Manuel I in Lisbon. Inside was a meticulously detailed military operation. The commander outlined a specific strike: sail his galleons into the Red Sea, lay waste to Jeddah, and launch a ground invasion directly into Mecca and Medina. The target was the Prophet's mosque. The objective was to remove the blessed body of the Prophet. He planned to hold the body hostage. Albuquerque would declare that until Muslims permanently vacated Palestine and Jerusalem, their prophet would not be returned. At that time, the Mamluk Empire of Egypt served as the protectors of the holy cities, but the Mamluks possessed no modern navy. Against European galleons armed with heavy cannons, the Islamic world had no defense. Thousands of kilometers away in Constantinople, the Ottoman Empire was sitting in a power vacuum. Sultan Bayezid II sat on the throne, a peace-loving man, a Sufi by nature. He believed in diplomacy, but he failed to account for a shifting geopolitical landscape, particularly the rising threat of the Safavid Empire, whose proxies were actively inciting rebellions inside Ottoman borders. Only one person in the royal family understood the danger. Prince Selim operated with cold calculation. He demanded immediate, extreme military strikes to eliminate the Safavids. Bayezid ignored him. Instead, he chose his eldest son, the diplomatic Prince Ahmed, as his heir. In 1511, when the Shah-Kulu rebellion erupted in Anatolia, Ahmed had the perfect opportunity to crush the rebels and project Ottoman strength. Like his father, he chose negotiation. This hesitation sent a clear signal to rival empires. The Ottomans were fracturing, unwilling to fight. Selim realized that if Ahmed became sultan, the state would be completely torn to pieces. Selim made a severe decision. For the first time in Ottoman history, a prince drew his sword against the ruling sultan. He was badly defeated by his father at the Battle of Tekirdağ and barely escaped with his life. But losing only forged him into something far more dangerous. Bayezid tried to rush Prince Ahmed to the capital to secure the succession, but he miscalculated the military's loyalty. The Janissaries, the world's first standing army and the core of Ottoman power, refused Ahmed. They wanted Selim's sheer iron will. The streets of Constantinople erupted in open clashes, and pro-Selim forces quickly seized the city. In April 1512, Selim rode into the capital victorious. He ended Bayezid's government, becoming the first Ottoman son to forcibly depose his own father. The threat of civil war remained. Prince Ahmed and Selim's other brothers declared rebellion, even seeking alliances with the Safavids. Selim hunted them down one by one. To permanently ensure no future uprisings could threaten the state, he invoked an old law created by Mehmed the Conqueror. He ordered the execution of his brothers, his nephews, and even infants. He eliminated every single person who could rival his government. By sacrificing his own blood relatives, he forged an unbreakable, unified state, earning the title Yavuz, the Grim. The region was now locked in a massive power struggle, the Sunni Ottoman Empire against the Shia Safavid Empire. At the head of the Safavids was King Ismail I, young, charismatic, and elevated by his followers to a near-divine status. Ismail commanded an army of fanatically devoted warriors, known as the Kizilbash. They were lightning-fast, highly emotional fighters, willing to die at his slightest signal. And Ismail was actively using these warriors to destabilize Ottoman territories. Before any swords were drawn, the two rulers clashed in letters. Selim wrote first, demanding Ismail submit and hand over his empire. Ismail replied sharply, mocking Selim's tone. He included a golden box filled with high-quality opium, suggesting the Ottoman Sultan was intoxicated. Selim fired back, challenging Ismail to come to the battlefield wearing a veil like a woman. After this venomous exchange, all paths to reconciliation were closed. The massive armies mobilized, heading straight for the field of Chaldiran. To fight Ismail, Selim had to march a massive army more than 1,500 kilometers from Anatolia to the Iranian border. Maintaining supply lines across that vast mountainous terrain was considered impossible. But Selim was a logistical mastermind. He built a complex supply chain no other army possessed. He established grain and weapon depots along the route and connected them directly to the Black Sea fleets, synchronizing land and naval logistics perfectly. In August 1514, the Ottomans reached Chaldiran. Facing the lightning-fast Kizilbash cavalry, Selim adopted a brilliant formation called Tabur Cengi, the wagon fort. He placed heavy supply carts face-to-face, tied together with thick iron chains, creating a physical wall. Hidden behind were artillery and 12,000 janissaries with matchlock muskets. The Kizilbash charged. At point-blank range, Selim gave one signal. Thousands of explosions ripped through the air. The invincible Safavid cavalry was slaughtered by cannonballs and gunfire. Shah Ismail was badly injured and barely escaped, leaving his treasury and family behind. The defeat at Chaldiran broke Ismail's spirit. The brutal outcome proved that traditional courage and swords could no longer survive against the systematic, mechanical power of artillery and modern matchlock fire. With the east secured, another power remained in the south, the Mamluk Empire of Egypt. They managed the administration of Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem, viewing the Ottomans as mere border guards. The Mamluks had a history of backing rebellions against Selim's family. In 1516, Selim crushed them in Syria. To finish the job, he had to reach Cairo. Standing directly in his way was the dreaded Sinai Desert, a deadly, waterless wasteland that had defeated conquerors for centuries. The new Mamluk Sultan, Tuman Bey, was certain Selim wouldn't dare step into the sand with heavy artillery. He was wrong. In January 1517, Selim moved thousands of soldiers, massive cannons, and 15,000 camels carrying water across the desert, reaching Cairo in just 5 days. At the Battle of Ridania, the two forces clashed. The Mamluks fought bravely, but they rejected firearms, considering them an act of cowardice. Their swordsmanship was no match for Ottoman firepower. The Mamluk army was annihilated in hours. Days later, inside the Jama Mosque of Cairo, attendants laid out a precious carpet. Selim had it removed and prayed on the bare floor. There, the last Abbasid caliph formally handed over his titles, and the Sharif of Mecca presented the keys to the Kaaba. With the empire spanning 3 continents, Selim stood as the undisputed caliph of the Islamic world. This monumental victory happened precisely when Afonso de Albuquerque's Portuguese fleets were massacring Muslims on the shores of Africa and seizing vital trade choke points across the Indian Ocean. If the technologically inferior Mamluks had remained in power, they would have been defenseless. The massive Portuguese galleons could have easily sailed into Jeddah and marched on Medina to forcibly steal the prophet's body. Selim's sudden arrival forced a strategic shift. He quickly stationed a modern, cannon-armed naval fleet directly in the Red Sea, locking down the coastline and blocking the Portuguese advance. Selim's calculated violence forged a permanent defensive wall that saved the honor and sanctity of the entire Muslim world forever. In 1520, Selim finally turned his attention west toward Europe, but before the campaign could begin, he fell ill with an infection. Refusing to show weakness, he rode out anyway. He died stubbornly in the saddle at the age of 49, passing away on the exact spot where he first fought his father and lost. Despite his grim reputation, Selim was a poet who understood the weight he carried. He once wrote, "I am the king of the lands of pain. Selim has turned to dust in your street. You can say that he is the dust of my path." Lasted only 8 years. Yet in that brief time, he laid the absolute foundation for his son, Suleiman the Magnificent, to lead the Ottomans into their greatest golden age. Selim bore the suffocating burden of his conscience and the heavy curses of history to keep his state from fracturing. When a civilization faces total annihilation, it cannot be saved by the peace of a Sufi, but only by the unrelenting sword of a mujahid.